Good morning. Let's say, good afternoon. It's a delight to launch today Run and Drill Weekly podcast, in which we dig into interesting topics in energy sector, starting with fossils, energy transition, renewables, and decarbonization. In this topic, we are going to shed light on decarbonization in the oil and gas industry. To discuss this topic, I'm so happy to welcome Suhail Diaz Valderrama. She's Director of Future Energy in Wood. Good afternoon, Suhail. My pleasure to see you again.
Good afternoon, Chef. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for this special invitation.
Thank you very much. It's all time my pleasure. So let's kick off with the first parts. And we say that the International Energy Agency estimated about 5.1 billion tons of CO2 emissions equivalent by 2022. Means the oil and gas operations are responsible of 15% of energy GHG emissions. Myself and you are committee members of ADIPAC in energy transition and decarbonization, and we have viewed hundreds of papers with innovative solutions. And
800 abstract.
sorry?
800
800.
abstract and 100 of paper, yes.
Okay, I viewed, I think, more than 400. Yes. So, with the innovative solutions and technologies. So my question is, do you agree with me that our industry is hugely investing a large scale, let's say large scale investment to decarbonize the sector?
Yes, agree. I've been, as you know, more than 25 years working in the oil and gas and also the energy sector. And I've seen an amazing evolution in terms of the decarbonization and energy transition topics. I can say that now, of course, also it's important to mention that all the, for example, health, safety, and environment, and also corporate social responsibilities are always there in the oil and gas sector. Maybe now the vision is more responsibility, how we can be more friendly and environmentally correct in our practices. I can say that, for example, there are different initiatives. You can see, for example, talking about quick wins, energy efficiency topics initiative that represent how we can produce in a more environmental way, how we can reduce fuel consumption and also, of course, directly reduce our emissions in our operations, how we can now we support more gas production in a way, how the energy mix change, and also how companies are investing more and more in terms of renewables or maybe more synergy with renewable energy. Also, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage that are important investment and also important ambition in terms of that topics, and also announced publicly. Certain companies have announced their ambition in terms of that. R&D, how research and development, as you said, innovation and also digital solutions are part of this commitment in terms of how we can track these emissions, how we can incorporate all of these AI techniques and also these parts is an important trendy topic right now. Also, if you ask me, because I've been involved also in terms of the sustainability reporting as well, I see how listed companies now is a mandate. They need to disclose information, they need to track, they need to measure their emissions, and also not only emissions, talking about ESG, environment, social, and governance. Other important topics like socials are included in these reporting practices. We can say, I see in the oil and gas industry now, life cycle assessment are important, how we can certify our products and measure all the carbon footprint that we have our products as well. I think there are important topics right now, and also as we talk, how things evolve, how, for example, we talk now about the cluster perspective, how we integrate cross-sectoral topics, how aluminum now is important, steel, oil and gas, how we can collaborate and how we can work together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And talking about natural gas, China at the moment is investing a lot to replace the big engines of the trucks and the buses, to replace the diesel engines with natural gas engines. And this is really, that's, I think, one of the main factors are really affecting the global consumption of oil. And we see how China at the moment is reducing its consumption of oil at the moment, and we see how prices are dropping. One of the main, one of the main things, I think, aspect I want to highlight in this topic, in this podcast, is the electrification, and I think it's hugely will be hugely participating to add value to decarbonize the oil and gas industry. So the electrification of the oil and gas industry certainly will play a crucial role to decarbonize many activities, but this electricity has to be clean. So in many cases, it generates an extra cost to produce it. So I'm talking about the green electricity. So in your opinion, how can the oil and gas companies combine between their investments in the operations and decarbonization, which will certainly hike the produced energy and so could hamper the efforts to deliver low energy cost?
Well, this is an important question, Joab. I think this is something how we can make all of this effort profitable as well, you know?
Mhm.
In terms of the investment, as you mentioned, there are important investment in all of this topic, in all the decarbonization project, etc. And also how you can maintain operation as well, because you need to ensure that you have energy security as well. The point about the clean energy, if we think in terms of short term, I think now the point is how we can think more instead of long-term investment, how we can understand now all of these important carbon mechanisms in place that we can see, for example, in the emission trading system or carbon prices in Europe and other in other regions as well there on their considerations. How we can think instead of the more the regulation as well, how regulations are evolving and how these could make all the non-decarbonized products and sector maybe more expensive in the future. This is a point that we need to understand. Also,
Yeah,
I can
sorry.
say that instead of renewables, we can see how after COP28, it was an important agreement instead of how we can triple the renewable capacity and how we can, for example, doubling our energy efficiency target, how we incorporate this in our operations. And also collaboration and partnership is another way that we can reduce the cost of this operation or this investment. If you think in terms of clusters, the cluster approach, as I mentioned before, how all the industrial sectors can collaborate with the oil and gas industry, with the energy sector, how we can integrate renewables, also hydrogen, carbon capture, utilization, storage, another topic here to make it more, maybe more affordable instead of cost. How
Mhm.
we contribute together instead of that. Also, another point that maybe is sometimes is a sensitive topic is the nuclear energy.
Yeah.
How in the previous COP starting saying, you know, that why
Mhm.
not to think about as a key player as well in our future energy mix.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I all the time say in conferences or my when I have the opportunity to talk to speaking opportunities, I say that renewables are not the enemy of fossils, and also fossils have to be not the enemy of renewables. So we should have like a combination between both fossils and the renewables,
And
renewable
renewables.
energies. Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I always think instead of a symbiosis, you know, symbiosis between both,
Yeah.
how we can, right, get this or meet this expectation in the future instead of our future energy mix.
Yeah, exactly. And so, talking about renewables, I think, or if we talk about fossils, if we talk about this combination, we need to decarbonize, make a lot of efforts to decarbonize the oil, the fossils. And if we shed light on decarbonization, we talk directly about technology and innovation. So technology and innovation are the backbone of decarbonization, means R&D. R&D investment has to be the cornerstone of any progress. One of the technologies I have witnessed is turning the captured sequestered CO2 to carbon fiber, allowing us to make high mechanical strength materials, lightweight and low thermal expansion, and extra chemical resistant. So you don't see this large window to absorb millions of tons of CO2.
Oof, I think you have, you mentioned this topic. I think about, I'm not sure if you heard about the circular carbon economy. This is a concept also promoted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia through CAPSARC and different institutes.
Mhm.
I think instead of the four R's, you know, how we can reduce, reuse, recycle, and also remove the emission, the CO2.
Exactly.
It, it,
Instead to just to store it, to store that carbon, CO2, and with risk of leakage, so why we don't reuse it, for example, in our industry?
Yeah, that's why this is a point because if you think instead of reduce, I think it's clear how we can use energy efficiency, renewables, nuclear, all of these sources of energy. If we think instead of reuse, we can say, well, maybe enhance or recovery, how we can use CO2 and how we can produce maybe more gas or hydrocarbon,
Mhm,
and also use it in the industry in food, beverage, there are different options without any chemical reactions or conversion.
mhm,
If we think instead of recycle, that it requires, as you mentioned in your example, a chemical conversion or reactions there, we have different options. For example, thinking about the circular economy itself, how we can carbon to polymers, carbon to materials, as you mentioned, carbon to fuel, for example, in my case, that I was working also in the maritime sector, that we were testing different alternative fuel for the vessel or for the engines. We say, why not methanol? But methanol require also CO2. That's why all of these alternative fuels are part of the uh, use of the CO2. And finally, you have the remove, you know, when it's already the emissions are there through different R&D technologies, talking about direct air capture or all the carbon storage, as you mentioned,
mhm,
you know, and also natural gas solution. There are different options.
mhm,
But instead of that, the point in all the strategies, in all the net zero strategies you see, the percentage considered in this point about recycling that, as you mentioned, carbon to materials, carbon to polymers, is between maybe 5 to 10%. It could be more, of course. It depends how we can activate this circular economy in all the strategy for companies or also countries. If you ask me, the majority, I wrote a paper recently about more focus on the Middle East, how we can reduce the emissions in the industrial sector. And 32% were more focused in the region, more or less, or in certain country, in CO2, in CCS, in carbon capture and storage.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and carbon fiber is hugely used in the aviation sector because it has very strong mechanical properties, and I think we can really recover more CO2 and we can reuse it to in materials, I believe, and we really participate to absorb more carbon, and we can really because when we reuse it, this carbon for materials, for example, we avoid the risk of leakage, for example.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, definitely. This is
Yeah,
an
yeah.
important point that we should consider it. That's why maybe instead of strategy, it should increase the percentage focus on this recycling part of the carbon circular economy.
Exactly, exactly. So my last question is, lately you have joined Wood. What are your promising projects in the Middle East right now? And
Oh,
how do you estimate carbon reduction in this promising project? yearly?
I think, well, I can say no, not only in terms of course, there are amazing feasibility studies, pre-FEED, FEED, construction projects in our pipeline, and also I'm happy to be part of uh, this project as well in my new role as well, maybe I'm leading also the energy transition hub for my company that covering carbon advisory, hydrogen, CCS, and also renewable. That's why covering everything.
Hmm.
I cannot discuss this point here because it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little there are a lot of confidentialities, but I can say in terms of different assessment and studies, for example, the Energy Industrial Council, they published recently data in terms of what will be the plan in 2024, 2030. If you see there are announcements, this is public information instead of UAE, for example, talking about the MENA region, that is the Middle East area that I'm more focused on, that you can see in terms of CCS ambitions, 42 million tons CO2 by 2035 in Saudi, 10 million here in the UAE. There are different ambitions, and also in terms of hydrogen. I'm impressed that I see also based on this analysis more green hydrogen, coming from the renewables. That is a very important topic. 77%, I think, is more green hydrogen than blue. That's why it's an important. We need to highlight this important project here in the region. And also, if you see in terms of renewables, the increase in terms of above, I think, 35 or 55, I think, gigawatts, instead of renewable energy, and also how solar energy represent an important point in the region.
Yeah,
And also, if you ask me in terms of my role in through the professional society, SPE, and also the collaboration group, there are amazing topics that we are working now in terms of educational campaign, how we can promote also the best practices that we see in the region, and also contribute and exchange with other regions.
yeah, exactly. I think the next we have to program next. Our next podcast will be about hydrogen. So allow me to say that about hydrogen. Last October, Algeria signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with Germany, Italy, and Austria to provide like green hydrogen to these countries through a pipeline. So it was like a
Mm.
memorandum of understanding, and this will be a very, very promising project if will be that concretized like a contract. And talking about renewables, Algeria at the moment started its plan to produce 15 gigawatt of electricity from renewable energies. So it's already started at the moment and will be achieved by like 10 years from now. Big part of the electricity, green electricity, will be used to produce green hydrogen, because as you know, Europeans are planning to produce to, let's say, to consume 20 million tons of hydrogen by 2030, and they will accounting to import 10 million tons, and part of it will be from Algeria, North Africa. And I think hydrogen at the moment, green hydrogen, is taking its place, but we struggle with some hurdles. We cannot transport it. We can transport it like blending it. We can blend it like 15% only with natural gas, or we can transport it through ammonia. So can you add something about that?
Well, I think this is an important topic in terms of
Yeah,
transportation, and also demand, You mentioned this point, and now how we can create this long-term demand, an agreement, contracts, thinking about different points and of takers, if we are talking about CO2 or maybe some components in terms of decarbonization. But in terms of solar, I think, or green hydrogen, I think an important topic right now. In the maritime sector, I think this is also part of the demand that we have in terms of the hydrogen derivatives, talking about ammonia, methanol, and all of these fuels. the point about certification, I think, is another point that we can discuss in another podcast, because it's create the common standards and certification are important, because
Mhm,
it's
mhm,
based on this depend of the premium that you can sell it.
mhm.
And how you establish, maybe, I'm not sure if you're familiarized or you heard about the green maritime corridors or the green corridors, so instead of onshore, if you're talking about pipeline.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
also, you mentioned initially all the abstract that we read in ADIPEC, and how all of this point on hydrogen starting becoming a very, very important topic globally.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So really, really, I have enjoyed the discussion with you, and we are running out of time, but I want to talk to you as long as possible, as you are an expert and so active member in LinkedIn and everywhere. You are publishing many articles. I'm very, very thankful for your efforts, and I have to thank you for accepting my invitation. And it will be all the time a pleasure to see you in other opportunities in the future.
Thank you, Chef, and thank you for this special invitation. I hope we can have more conversation about all of these amazing and interesting